Peace and blessings. I'm Dave Adams, and welcome to another exciting edition of The Conscience Presents. Today, our topic is a platform for Pittsburgh. We're going to introduce you to libertarian candidate Mr. Mark Rauterkus, who's running for not one, but two positions for City Council and for Pittsburgh's Comptroller seat. Stay with us. This is going to be a great show. We'll be back in 1 minute. Welcome to A Conscience Presents. I'm Dave Adams, your host, and we got a great show for you today. Libertarian, what is it? What does it mean? I know many of you have called into The Conscience and asked us, what is this libertarian? What does it mean? How is their platform? What do they stand for? Well, today you're going to find out. We have today a wonderful person, Mr. Mark Rauterkus. He's a family man. He has great hobbies. We're going to find out all about that. So welcome, Mark, to the show. How you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for having us.
You're running for two positions, City Council and Comptroller, too.
Right.
Very different positions, but how do you feel like you're qualified with that?
Yeah, they're different parts. You know, the controller position is citywide, and city council is like just 1/9 of it. So, I live on the south side, and we're able to mix it up with neighborhood groups. And part of the battle is to bring new perspectives to city government, and I think I'm able to do that. So I think I'm vastly qualified because I'm a libertarian. There hasn't been libertarians or other people elected to city government, and I would be able to bring a new voice, a new set of perspectives.
Well, tell us about libertarian. What is that exactly? What does it mean, and what do you stand for?
I call myself a common sense libertarian. Okay. Libertarians are generally people that value freedoms and personal liberties, but we also value the flexibility of having some money in the bank so that we're generally financially prudent. We're not going to overspend money. We're not going to go into debt. So when you're able to pay as you go or have some money in the bank, you're more free. And what we've done now in the city is we've racked up a ton of debt, and the overspending big government philosophy is not ours. So we'd prefer to have a streamlined government that stays away from everybody else's, doesn't invade other countries, it doesn't invade your business, it doesn't invade your household. So it's sort of a live and let live attitude with libertarians. It
sounds almost conservative, very conservative, would you say?
Well, libertarians don't really fit on that scale between conservatives and liberals. We're conservatives in some hands, in some instances, but we're very liberal in the other way. So that doesn't quite fit. I have a song that we play in our CDs is "Don't Put Me in a Box." So it depends on the different issues. And then in some issues, the libertarians have a lot of debate among themselves. So it's not really either conservative or liberal.
So, okay, let's say if your district votes you into city council, what would somebody get with Mark Rauterkus at the leadership position or the representative?
Well, the thing that I care a lot about is kids and children. So I would love to be on city council the chairperson of the sports and city parks and youth task force. There's a city park and youth recreational task force, and that's actually chaired now by someone that doesn't really care much about citywide sports and citywide involvement, engagement. And we can do a lot with parks, and they do a good job at what they are given to. But I think the leadership that I'd be able to bring citywide, even though it's just my district as far as being elected, but I think we would have things that would be positive for the north side, positive for the east end, positive citywide. So that's where I would really attack. I'd start a youth technology summit. I'd really try to get coaches involved. I think we do things in a city that are often about bricks and mortars, about buildings. You know, they save our swimming pools, well, and I worked hard on that, or save our rec centers. But really what happens that's special there is the mentoring, the coaching, the interaction among your team, the community building, the learning to play well with each other. And those are things that are not expensive, but they're very powerful. You know, when someone's missing school, or now someone needs help with homework or their studies, or interacting well with the schools and getting moms and dads and uncles, you know, to really help with the kids. And we're not doing as much as that as we need to. And I know in the suburban areas they have a much different approach, and there is more continuity, and there's more parent involvement or engagement, community engagement. So I would bring a whole new set of energies and priorities to the city parks efforts.
Mark, you know this show is representative of the African American community, and that's a very touchy subject with a lot of our constituents that come in and want to hear just what it is that is going to make things different in our community. Before we go to that, tell me a little bit more about you personally, Mark Rauterkus, the man. You have a family?
Sure. My wife and I got married and moved back. I grew up in Pittsburgh. My dad was a Pittsburgh public school teacher, and he's retired. My grandfather was a musician. He actually started the School of Music at Duquesne. So I've come from a big family of teachers. Mm-hmm. I'm a coach. I don't like the classroom setting for myself, but I've coached swimming in 6 different states, and before was a publisher. I published a lot of books. So I have a journalism background, a communication background, and a coaching background. So the sports and recreation things are very near and dear to me, and I've worked in many settings from around the world to publishing books from Olympic coaches.
Do you have children?
Yeah, I have 2 boys. They both go to public schools. Eric is a middle schooler at Frick, and Grant is in elementary on the south side. We walk to school at Phillips. They're in the magnet programs, and we love and support the public schools. So I've been lucky and fortunate to be a stay-at-home dad at times when the babies were smaller. My wife has the big job of the family, so to speak. She's a director at UPMC Ioneer, and she's also a Pitt professor. So she has a pretty demanding job, and then I'm able to be a little more in the support environment for the family. And that's sort of the way we like it. We're able to do some travel with family and education, and we've gone abroad here and there at times, to China, to New Zealand. And the family life's important, and the community life's important. So it's been able to give me the flexibility to go out and learn things about the community and publish things and really keep some issues pushing, the city to better itself.
Hobbies. What do you like to do? What do you find in your spare time that you really enjoy doing?
Well, I like to swim.
Okay.
We've done some races. I like to the canoe. We put the canoe on the river occasionally and drag it down and mostly, it has to do with sports and play.
Okay. Is it hard to canoe in the river?
No,
I've always wanted to do that.
On a windy day, it's a little bit up, but no, it's fun. As rivers are great. They're something that makes Pittsburgh somewhat unique. Okay. And we're aquatic people, so yeah, I like to hang with the guys at the pool, or go to Sandcastle, go to the rec centers. Those are the things that are generally, we ride bikes along the bike paths or take a trip.
Okay. Let's get to the nitty-gritty.
Sure.
A lot of people have emailed me and asked Mark Rauterkus, they see your blog. They see you have a lot of things out there, a lot of information that you send out throughout the community. Let me ask you this. Your family is very structured. You have the education in your family. How do you feel about portions of the community throughout the city that may not have that structure, that family structure? With your background and your enjoyment with the team and the sports and the things like that, how do you see kids in poor communities, African-American communities, that don't have the structure at home, but still need something to do? And we see this in Pittsburgh, especially we hear this in our communities all the time. There's nothing for our kids to do. If Mark Rauterkus was in city council, or if you were controller and you had finances to be able to work with, what could you do to help communities like that?
One of the things I talk about often is a youth technology summit. Every year we should use the convention center and focus on technology. The kids are wired. They're using the iPods. They're, some of them, they're using the internet. And it's where the future is, and it's where a lot of jobs are. And the people that are working at the church groups or working with coaches or working with music, and there's not a lot of, they need to use it too. So I would love to have a 3 or 4 day summit every year that we could launch that would really talk about technology, and it would get involved businesses, and it would get involved the college and university settings, it would get involved the schools, and there's be some competitions, and we get the big industry, from the high tech fields and the internet service providers and stuff, so that's one thing. And then I think from there we have neighborhood groups. So I'm a tech guy in a way, and I think that's a good way to learn and to read online. And we need to make that affordable and available and accessible to everybody. So citywide Wi-Fi and some of those types of things would be important. And then you get into the arts, you get into the music, you get into the sports. Your special interest, we should be able to make you literate in. And as we do this, we're going to be teaching literacy, and we're going to be teaching about science and math as we go. But it's got to be fun. It's got to be new and fresh for the kids. So that's one just little project that I would definitely like to do as far as youth technology.
Do you think the city is contributing enough finances to the Pittsburgh public schools for that type of thing that you're looking for?
Oh, yeah, that type of thing could pull its own weight. And that's sort of one of my platforms. Is it would be an event that would make money for the city. And we could do it well and have, a big festival, and instead of, talking about spectator sports, we'd be talking about real participation and cutting edge things that we're creating.
Are we talking about all kids or just a portion?
Yeah,
in Pittsburgh, we see so many portioned things where I like it left out. What are we talking about with? I think it sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, I think the digital divide is, we got to cross that. And, we need to empower all the people and all the kids about how to challenge themselves, how to be literate, how to be smart in a modern world. So we have to include everybody. And I think there are businesses that would get involved if they know, hey, there's a certain little package or program that we could help with in a certain way. I helped or tried to get the Pittsburgh Interfaith Impact Group, the interfaith groups, to put small computer labs inside all the rec centers.
Who is that? Pittsburgh?
Well, we had a youth task force. This was some years ago, and we talked about it on the web, and we went and researched, how can we make a significant improvement to the kids' lives? And, hey, let's give them some literacy and technology together. And we went to the mayor when Mayor Murphy was here and said, listen, we've got these computers donated. We've got these volunteers ready to help. There's, at the time, I think there was 16 or so rec centers that had space for computer labs. Okay. And so let us put 4 computers in all these computer labs, and we'll do some after-school activities or make it available for homework and teach parents about the dashboard and stuff like that. And we were told no. The city didn't want to do that. So
any reason why?
Well, yeah, we found out 6 months later they wanted to play a game of chicken with the politics, and the pawns were the kids, and they closed all the rec centers. And Mayor Murphy said, no swim pools next summer. So then we had to backtrack. But what I was trying to do is engage more citizen participation in these facilities and into the lives of the kids. And we've never really got off of first base on that. We need to get parent involvement and community involvement and make this accessible.
Like everywhere else.
Yeah. And I think, first, technology is important. And that isn't going to work for everybody. I think sports is involved, is important. That's in schools, of course. I have a couple philosophies about Pittsburgh public schools. When you're young, in the elementary grades, K, 1, 2, 3, our schools in Pittsburgh are good. They're very good. Some are probably better than others, but when the kid, though, becomes in the middle school, age 5, grades 5 and 6, and if a family can, that's generally when they leave the city. They pack up their belongings, they go to a suburban setting. I don't know if it's South Park or Woodland Hills or whatever. They leave because the middle school situations get a little more dangerous for the kids. There's a little bit of more, there's more bullying. The learning isn't quite as rigorous as it needs to. And then in the high schools, some of the high schools work, but by and large, our Pittsburgh public high schools need a lot of attention. And so I was hoping to see a lot more occur with this high school reform. And that's one of the other jobs is controller. You're the watchdog of the finances for the city as it relates to the public schools. It's definitely a school board driven, a superintendent driven school district, but there's this person over here in the city on downtown that has a duty to watch the performance and be able to audit schools. And often what we do is we get in a conversation just about money. You know, how much does that school rehab cost? But we're not talking about the performance of the kids in the classroom or in language education or in the gifted education or attendance. You know, so I think there are a lot of things that the schools need to be monitored on that aren't dollars.
Well, let's talk about that when we come back.
Sure.
Mark, when we come back, I want to ask you just about that, the Pittsburgh public school system. Many feel that it is a entity within itself, that it can't be governed because they make their own rules, they do their own thing. So as comptroller, let's talk on that end.
Sure.
How do you feel you can possibly get in there and
Okay.
make a difference, okay? We'll be back right after this.
You know, Clarence, you and I should hang out more often. You know, he wears these cheap suits, but they look good on him.
So she says, why lobster?
Polyp sighting at 16L.
You never know when a colon polyp is going to show up.
Aunt Ethel, you've been ducking me since '99 at St. Mary's. You
Get
owe
the
me a
polyp
pie.
early and stop colon cancer before it starts.
Do I look fat in this?
Don't wait for symptoms. Get the test. Get the polyp.
They love me. They want me here, don't you? Come on.
Get the cure.
These are my peeps.
Welcome back to A Conscience Presents. We're speaking right now at our platform for Pittsburgh, and we're also here with Mark Rauterkus, libertarian, running for controller and for city council on the south side, correct?
Yeah,
so on the south side. Let's talk about Pittsburgh Public Schools, and I'm going to bring this into a home where we are. You know there's a new superintendent. He's in his, second or third year, I believe.
He's already got a raise.
Yeah, already. And already did his own assessment, which I thought was kind of crazy. But let's look at this. African Americans in the city of Pittsburgh feel that we've been ripped off completely. He has totally disrupted our neighborhoods, removing schools, putting students in other places, and we're still looking to see and make some sense out of this. Now, you spoke about the job of controller, and let's, for those who may not be as politically knowledgeable as you and I are, what does the job of controller do? And you mentioned how they may be able to watchdog Pittsburgh Public Schools, but we feel that it's an entity within itself, and nobody could come in and control this this entity,
Right.
this Pittsburgh Board of Education. So as controller, tell us a little bit about the position, what you would do, and how you see that you might be able to make a difference.
Yeah, the controller, as our city charter dictates, has a very strong responsibility to be a financial watchdog on the schools.
Right.
And, you know, we're losing students every year. They leave the district is shrinking. You know, so some of the right-sizing programs were very abrupt, very hard. It was a big kick in the teeth to a lot of people. Some of the students had been in their third school by the time they were in fifth grade, and families are getting yanked around by the district, and that doesn't happen in suburban Pittsburgh. You go to a school, you know that school's going to be there for the next 12 years.
Absolutely.
And, you know, they're not going to be opening high schools or closing high schools. Even summer school was closed because they had a bit of a problem at one of the buildings. So, you know, we yank our families around too much, and we don't allow for, you know, a nice stability. So there are a lot of ways that the controller can help. One thing that I'm going to float as far as a new idea to you is that we should form a citizens Congress. And if I'm controller, I'm going to reach out and we're going to get organizers and community activists, and we're going to make that controller's office a real launch pad for sustaining discussions, for evaluation, for review, for audits, and then maybe we'll deputize hundreds of people as deputy auditors, you know, and go out and let's work on where are the crossing guards now, where should they be later, let's map out things and really work on all sorts of issues. And I feel that the city doesn't have really easy places to grab onto to really help. You know, controller, you know, things are out of control. You know, so we need the controller's office to be a place that citizens can get a grip on the city. And that means getting a grip on the schools, you know, getting a grip on the parks, you know, getting a grip on neighborhoods and city government. So, you know, I see this as a way to make the controller's office, you know, and people go into Grand Street and there's this sign on the door, nobody ever goes in, nobody ever goes out, you know, there's only 20 employees there. But, you know, And we already have oversight. You know, there's Act 47 over here, and we got the ICA overlords here. You know, so lots of people from Harrisburg and Oldon are watching these budgets. But as they do that, I'm afraid that the citizens are losing control of the city. And so I will make the controller's office very much an open office. We need a new philosophy as far as open source. We'll have access to records. We'll have access to meetings. We'll discuss things in length.
Well, isn't that available now?
Well, the controller's office does very little. You know, they might do some bean conning. They might do some number crunching. The controller that was there now mentioned he would tax the Cathedral of Learning, and if the Cathedral of Learning was taxed, everybody's tax bill would go down. Yep, somewhat ridiculous things. And I think we need to have better organized places where people can come and really get involved and make an impact on our city.
So do you feel that nonprofits don't have a responsibility?
Oh, no, nonprofits certainly have a responsibility, but we need to discuss that. And but then it's like it's all cloaked in secrecy, that we don't know how many nonprofits are really at the table and how much they're given. You know, so that doesn't work for me. You know, if nonprofits are going to make a donation, sign the check and put it out in the open. Okay. And if we're going to start counting on $5 million one year and $3 million the next year, you know, why? You know, let's. I don't want to be begging to the nonprofits. You know, I don't want to be begging to Harrisburg, and I want us to figure out ways that we can pull our own weight and make sure that, you know, Pittsburgh becomes a viable place, so that in, 10 years or 20 years again, you know, our children will, love us for us, and we'll be out of this terrible mess.
Let's talk about districts now, and let's look on the council side. Your district, very diverse. You have the haves and the have-nots.
Sure, yeah.
In your district, and we're talking up on the hill.
Right.
You know where I'm talking about. From your opponent, what is the difference, and what can an African-American voter on the south side in your district, why would they vote for Mark Rauterkus?
What works for me is freedom and liberties, and that works for everybody, and it's worked for America for hundreds of years. You know, since the days of Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, we've had this American style of government that says, allow people to be free, and they will be able to better themselves, and they'll find what works for them and make it work. So Pittsburgh now, to use my opponent, can't be in a position where we just give away things all the time. And that's happened perhaps in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And that's what my opponent wants to do. He knows that the needs in Belts Hoover are different than the needs of the Southside Slopes, the needs in Oakland. Sure. But we all need freedom. We all need liberties. We all need government to do its job as far as, being protecting, doing police force. But it can't be giving away this to a special interest group, that to another special interest group, building tunnels under the river that aren't going to pan out. There are some really bad boondoggles out there. And, so I would like us to concentrate on, freedom and liberties for everybody. And, and that means you're not going to have police beating down your doors for, on brutality type measures. It's being able to be personally free. And part of that is, a deep philosophical belief that when we have freedom and people are able to better themselves, that they will.
Mark, how many black business do you have on Carson Street in your district?
Geez, very few.
Why is that? Or let me ask you this. Maybe that's not a fair question. Let me ask you this. As council representative for your district, what could you do to, and I asked this question to City Council, so let me take it back. I ask every member of City Council, you're familiar with the study the University of Pittsburgh came out with showing the disparities in the city. I ask every council member at City Hall, what would they be willing to stand up publicly and say to their district to make their district better in closing this disparities gap, this embarrassment to the city of Pittsburgh? You as a councilman and a representative on your South Side district, what would you do to make that gap? I hear people, African Americans on the South Side, constantly complain there's nothing for us to do.
Yeah. Well, In the past, I have walked the picket line, so to speak, when the construction or the new stadiums happened, and there was a black, union of workers, and I was with them, and the pass-throughs that occurred, in past administrations with past projects that were just not right, and we needed to be monitoring that, and we didn't have real good access to government records and government spending, which I think we could see so that we can really understand, where the minority contracts are and where they're not and where they're just a sham. So I've been fighting that fight in my ways, in the past times, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 years ago. So businesses, to your question, perhaps it's how do we fight that? I think we have to fight it, with the kids.
How do you help your black constituents in your district to get involved in what's going on in the big boom on that district? I've gone over there several times, and I love to go shopping. I look for a black business or a black business owner. I think there's one.
Yeah, there are
I believe
a few.
there's one. And I'm just, when I talk to your people in your district, black people, who say there's nothing for us to do, it's even hard to get a job because it's still that little mom and pop mentality there on Carson Street. You know it. Everybody knows each other. They hire their family or this or that. And there's a segment of the district that is left out from all the booming enterprise going on in the South Side. As a representative, do you see any way, or do you have any plan of making sure that everybody gets involved in that process?
The best way that I see it is not to do giant city projects that take all the money for tunnels under the river, for new stadiums or convention centers that are going to, collapse and wobble, And if we're not spending big sums of money on things, then we'll be able to focus on the families, the smaller issues, the small kids, and we'll give kids a great education here in the city. They need the resources. We'll give them access to recreational centers, and they'll be able to learn and grow and do as well as everybody else throughout the county. And there's a layer of poverty here that is huge, and it's about a lack of opportunity. I think we have to grow our kids out of that and let them know that they're as strong and powerful as anybody from South Park or North Allegheny or anything else. And we need to compete against those kids, in our school sports and in our extracurricular activities. So I'm of the mind that we empower these kids and give them the best love and care and treatment as we can. We get government out of the way as far as doing massive big ticket spending. And Pittsburgh will start to heal itself, and we'll grow out of this by having freedom and flexibility and liberty. And there are other aspects of when you talk about blight, or we talk about some of the neighborhood issues that come out. There's abandoned properties, and as a libertarian, we have an approach for that too. And it sort of changes the tone. But I'm a big advocate of the land value tax. And when you tax the land, it is a way to encourage development everywhere, as opposed to the building. And it gets technical, and I don't know if it's really the best thing to talk about it, on a TV show, but with the internet, we've researched this and we've understand it. But right now, if you have a dilapidated house, and then maybe you even knock it down, or the roof's falling in, the sidewalk's all cracked, you go to the county and say, listen, my house isn't worth this. It's depreciated. It's less. So government then gives that person a tax break because the porch is falling apart. Meanwhile, the other neighbor, he fixes up his house. He gets it painted. He makes sure the things are working. He adds an addition. You go to government, and that person's penalized because we're taxing the building.